Local 514 interviewed Nakuset of the Native Women's Shelter and Lynda Khelil of la Ligue des Droits et Libertés on Montreal's recent $171 million class action lawsuit, alleging that the City of Montreal hasn't done enough to combat racial profiling. Craig discussed with Lynda La Ligue des Droits et Libertés' initiative to ask for an end to street checks. Craig also discussed the way Indigenous communities in Montreal are disproportionately affected by this issue.
So Lynda, could you please just state your name and your position at La Ligue?
Lynda Khelil, spokesperson for the Ligue des Droits et Libertés.
Thank you so much. So are you guys involved in the class action lawsuit that's being put forward to the City of Montreal to demand compensation for those who've experienced racial profiling?
No, we are not involved. It's a class action by the Ligue des Noirs du Québec. It's another organization.
I guess involved in the way of like providing testimony, data, anything like that?
No, we are not a part of this class action.
Thank you. So I understand that La Ligue is asking for an end to street checks in Quebec. Could you tell me why the organization is asking for this?
Yes, so we are asking the government of Quebec to ban street checks. It's an arbitrary practice, and there is three reasons why the government must ban this police practice. The first one is that it violates human rights of every person being street checked. We are talking about the right to liberty, the right to privacy, anonymity in public space, and the right to protection against arbitrary detention. And the second reason is that street checks are a dimension of racial and social profiling. We know that people, racialized people, Indigenous people, Black people, homeless people, people in a situation of marginality in public space, sex workers are more targeted by street checks than others, and it's a practice at the root of the phenomenon of racial and social profiling. And the third reason is that police in Quebec, police officers do not have the authority to do street checks. They don't have the power to do that under statute or common law. But still, they are doing this practice under the because they are allowed to do it by political authorities, because political authorities are not putting an end to this practice. That's why it continue. So we ask the government to ban this practice, and we have 10 question and answer on our website to inform people what is it exactly a street check and why must it be banned. And we also have put in a statement on our website that organizations and individuals can sign to ask the government to act.
Thank you very much for your response. Do you think that beyond banning street checks, is there anything else that needs to be done to address and end racial profiling in Montreal society?
Yes, so a lot must be done. The street checks is a part. It's one practice that is at the root of racial and social profiling. A lot of other action must be done. One of the other action is to it's what the judge in Luamba decision have decided several months ago. It's to put an end to the power of police officers to do traffic stops randomly, do random traffic stops, because it has been demonstrated that this power is at the root of racial profiling. And it's important just to let you know there is a difference. So the traffic stops are different than street checks. Maybe I can just resume what is a street checks. So it happens in the streets with the pedestrians. It can also involve the people in a car who are not the I'm not sure how to, the motorist. So it's basically it's in the streets. It targets pedestrians mostly, and it's a practice where a police officer tries to identify a person and to collect information in a situation where the person has no legal obligation to identify himself or herself, nor to answer any question of the police officers. And a street check is not an arrest. It's not an arrestation. It's not in the power of detention by police officers. It's not when police officers give a ticket to someone. It's not that. And it's outside also the scope of police investigation. Recognize the police investigation, and the information collected by police officers, mostly they are put in a database for intelligence purpose. And also when a person is being street checked, there is like a dynamic of authority with the police officer, and it's hard to express our rights in those kind of interaction. And we heard young people, mostly young Black people saying, well, if I tell the police officer what are my rights, sometimes it escalates because the police officers don't react necessarily well. They see it like a contestation of their authority, and then it escalates. So what basically with our campaign for a street check ban in Quebec, we are saying the burden is not on individuals, it's on the authorities to act and to protect rights and freedom of citizens, and to ban this practice. And it's something that has been done in Nova Scotia since 2019, so it's possible to do it, and it will not cause any problems to security safety. And also it's important to know that police services have not demonstrated the necessity of this practice to ensure public safety. So that's being said, other action, it's collecte de données. How we say in English? Database, no. I don't know if you can help me, but it's something, there are recommendations by the Human Rights Commission in Quebec, the Commission des droits de la personne et des droits de la jeunesse, for more than 10 years. If the government is serious about putting an end to racial and social profiling and any type of discriminatory profiling, they have all the recommendation. They just have to put in act recommendations by the Commission and several organizations that are asking years after years for the government to act. And we are, so I said about the collecte de données at all level of police action. And also we are talking about doing a review of bylaws by municipalities. It's something in Montreal, for example, it's an action, an engagement of the administration of the city of Montreal since 2018. And we are now in 2023, and this engagement has not been completed by the administration. And we have signed a public letter several days ago, condemning the administration about the fact that she's not acting seriously in this type of action. And so the important is to recognize the problematic of racial and social profiling, which is not done by all police services in Quebec, and to act on the power of police officers, and not on, and it's a systemic problematic. It's not an individual problematic, and often we see that the action taken by police services are for training or sensibilization, but it will not put an end to a systemic practice to act on the individual level.
Thank you so much. So I tuned into the press conference that you guys held the other week when you announced to essentially demand the Quebec government to put an end to street checks. And if I recall correctly, I remember someone stating that the data on social profiling is gathered, but not racial profiling. Is this right?
About what practice?
For street checks, data is collected on social profiling, like homelessness, but data is not collected on racial profiling. Did I understand that right, or am I completely
off? Okay. I think it depends on the practice. For street checks, the data are collected. It depends of the police service, but in Montreal and Repentigny, for example, there is data about racial identity of individuals being street checked. That's why in 2019, the report of three academics on the data of the SPVM, they were able to identify the disproportion of street checks according if the person is an indigenous person, a Black person, Arabs, and they have shown that there is a huge disproportion. That's what we call racial profiling. And in 2021, there has been also a report about street checks and traffic stops, both practices in Repentigny that have shown that Black person are 3 times more stopped by police than white people. And I think maybe in the press conference about the social condition, also for the phenomenon of social profiling, I think we don't have the data for street checks, but there is data for the tickets, for tickets being given to people in situation of marginality in public space and homeless people.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share you think is important to consider?
I will see my notes. I think, just another important thing I didn't say is that since 2020, the SPVM and the Ministry of Public Safety, they have adopt guidelines for street checks. So those guidelines are like a form of regulation, but not legal regulation. It's a way to regulate this practice. And what we are saying is that it's nothing more than a smoke screen, and it doesn't resolve anything. We ask for a ban and not for a regulation, because regulation will still give permission, will still allow, it's not permission, will still allow police officers to do street checks. So we say the only solution, if the government is taking seriously rights and freedom violation and the racial and social profiling problematic, is to put an end to this practice. And it has been done since 2019 in Nova Scotia. So I just want to say it's important because in their point of view, they are saying that they are active. So we hear the city of Montreal saying we take it seriously, we are acting, we have the SPVM is the first police service to have a policy on street checks, and we say no, it's not the solution, because it will not put an end to rights violation, racial and social profiling, and it doesn't how would you say, it overshadow the fact that police does not have the power to do street check, and it's very important to police officers to act within the limits of their power. And just to let you know also that there is problematics when police act also within the limits of their powers. There is problematics. We don't want people to understand that because street check are banned, everything is resolved. It's one dimension, street check. There are several dimensions of racial and social profiling, and we must act seriously on every dimension. That's why for street checks, we ask for a ban.
Thank you.
And we will give the statement. We will transmit the statement to the Minister François Bonnardel this spring. And we invite organizations and individuals to sign the statement. It is in French and English on our website.
Does the government currently know that La Ligue is asking for this, or not until the spring?
Yes, we have wrote to them, and we will have a meeting with someone of the bureau of the office of Mr. François Bonnardel this week. But the signatories, the signataires, will send the petition with the signatories during the spring. And in the context, we also know that the minister wants to put a new, how do we say in English, projet de loi?
I don't know the exact term, but no, projet de loi.
Yeah, but he wants to put forward a new projet de loi this spring, and so it's a moment also to act on street checks. So that's why we will put pressure and revendicate about this issue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to. So I'm looking into the class action lawsuit being put against the city of Montreal. Mayor Valérie Plante and the new police chief, Fadi Degar, have been subpoenaed to court to essentially address why they have not done enough to address racial profiling in the city. So I'd like to understand this a little bit more in the context of how Indigenous people are targeted by the police, and specifically Indigenous people who are homeless. So I guess I wanted to start out by asking, are Indigenous people disproportionately affected and targeted by police stops conducted by the SPVM?
I mean, when you think of police stops, you usually think of it in a car, right?
So it could be in a car, but also just street checks as well.
Yeah, well, we already know that, especially during COVID, that a lot of the Indigenous homeless population were getting tickets because they wouldn't, go inside after the curfew. And we actually are working with a lawyer that's bringing that to court to fight for them, right? So, but I mean, Indigenous women, like a report came out in 2019 saying that Indigenous women are 11 times more likely than any other nationality to be racial profiled by the police. So the thing is that it's crickets on the side of the police. They're not doing anything to address it. And, it's, we have to approach them. So during COVID again, we reached out to the police to try to figure out how we can help them to address it, right? So we had a meeting, and I know Marie-Ève was there, and the Aboriginal liaison officer, Carlo DeAngelis, was there, and someone from the city of Montreal, and one of the police commanders, a woman, I forget what her name was. And we said, why don't we have some kind of public forum where Indigenous women that have been targeted by the police can share about their experience, and then maybe y'all will give an apology or something. And we were in the process of working on this with Quebec Native women, but things seemed difficult during COVID to actually get things going. So it's something that we approached them and they were okay with it. But you see, it's always our efforts. We're the ones who are like, you're not very nice to us. You should be nicer. Let us tell you how to be nicer to us. Like, and right now the Ishkwe project is going to pick up on that. We're going to have to re-meet with them, have the conversation again, and we even have a couple of women that are willing to come forward to share their experience. And the thing is that there's always a catch, right? Because if the women come forward, are they going to be targeted again? Right? And in our experiences, when women have been mistreated by the police, we never get justice. I know that one particular Cree woman, and I've been working at the shelter for 20 something years, and I've known her since I began my career. She was mistreated at the Atwater Metro, sort of like near Cabot Square, that particular exit there. And it was someone who used to work at the Open Door, Khelil, who has moved on since, that witnessed that the police had grabbed her by she's wearing a hoodie, and pulled her onto the floor, and a group of them just spoke to her in a really disgusting manner. And Caleb tried to intervene, and they were just like pushing him out of the way. And then, as it turned out, a social worker that works with the police showed up, and then they stopped. And the Cree woman was so devastated that she was just bawling her eyes out. And they ended up calling an ambulance for her. And while she's getting ready to get onto, the gurney or whatever you call it, the police ticketed her. So I had to bring that to Fatty back in the day before he went to, Lungai and then came back. And they did their own internal review and they said, nah, we're good. We didn't do anything wrong. We were saving her life. And that had to go to like the next level, and we're waiting. Meanwhile, many years later, about 2 years ago, same woman is outside Cabot Square, across the street from the Pentecostal church, sitting on the stairs and needing support because she's considering suicide. And David Chapman from Resilient sat with her for 4 hours. And when she finally said, okay, call an ambulance, like, I'm okay with that, they sent like 11 police officers and a canine unit. So the thing is that, the systemic racism or profiling, whatever you want to call it, it's everywhere, because it was the 911 operator that flagged the police to say, oh, they gave me the name, this woman's a problem. Maybe you should, send police and a canine unit instead of an ambulance. The ambulance came afterwards, but it inflamed everything. Right. So when she saw the police, she got mad at David. She's like, why did you call the police? It's like, I didn't call the police. I called an ambulance. They sent the police. There was a lot of negotiations that had to be done. So now that's going to the Human Rights Commission. And we're waiting. And it's many years. And we're waiting. So we don't see justice. Right. And it gets to the point, like, I was looking into seeing whether or not there are any Indigenous groups involved with this class action lawsuit. And, I understand the Native Friendship Center was approached and they just was like, nah. Like, the thing is that I feel like in my opinion, is that the Indigenous community is a little burnt out of being of sharing their trauma and having to prove their trauma and then getting compensated. And we saw this with like the residential school payouts, that they had to, share the most horrible details And then, the government's like, oh, well, you only get 2,000 for that. Like it's crap. And we see it over and over again. And it's just like, it's why come to the table and try to relay? Because the issue at the end of the day is, are you safe from the police? Has that work been done? And why hasn't it been done? From what I know, like my Ishkwe staff, as soon as Fatty got reappointed, I said, I know him, write him, tell him we work together. Nothing. No, like, so trying to build bridges is not easy. And we are sort of, left behind. So eventually we'll get there, but it's not for us to chase them and be like, please, please, please treat us better. But it's up to them to do something. And we don't see any effort on their part. Um, and there is no safety in that. So to go and complain, this is why this Cree woman, she's anonymous because she's still on the streets. And she is, if they know that, oh, she's causing trouble, she's, making waves, she's putting in complaints, they can retaliate. And yeah, so it's not safe. That was long.
No, it was all appreciated to hear. Thank you for sharing. Do you feel like your efforts and community efforts are better put towards, protecting the community from the harms of police rather than, going after the police to kind of hold them accountable?
Well, that's what we're doing. We're really having a lot of services to support people and to have advocates so that when we have to speak to the police, we're ready. So it's not just the person. Like even with the Ishkwe project, if a family member goes missing and the family wants to make a report to the police, we have an agreement with the SPVM saying that our staff can do it on their behalf. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a disconnect and it hasn't been mended. So people don't feel comfortable going into a police station saying, my daughter, my cousin has gone missing. I need you to make a report. There's, we see that what's happened with trying to create reports on missing women in different provinces that even doesn't even get done. It's like, oh, she's partying, she's doing this, don't worry about it. A lot of people think that, the whole issue of missing and murdered is like finished because the inquiry finished. And then we see what's happening in Winnipeg. And, like our girls, our staff are busy, like this is an ongoing issue. And it's in order to start the process, you have to make that report. So our staff can do it on behalf. If they're not comfortable going in and that's what's stopping them from making a report, we'll do it on your behalf.
Thank you. And in terms of specifically racial profiling, do you think that there's any way that we can end this, at least in Montreal, with police still existing, or is it just kind of like take down the whole system?
The thing is that, my experience working with the SPVM is that there was a training many years ago, and the training went in one ear and out the other. So there's no actual accountability on the police to absorb, and it's not actually mandated. So if we compare that to, getting, first aid training, after the training, you do an exam. If you fail the exam, you don't get your little, certificate. Why isn't that implemented with the police? So it doesn't go one ear and out the other, right? So they have to. And if they don't pass the training, then there's consequences, right? So I think that's what needs to happen. It's not just like everyone sit down and listen to someone talk about this and that, because a lot of the times, like in my experience, they'll do everything they can to be like, you can't make me, right? But I mean, basically we want to be treated nicely. So Why aren't you treating us nicely? And that's where it's interesting that I heard that, Valerie Plante is like, oh yeah, you deserve money. Okay, but why not fix the problem? It's like residential school. Yeah, have some money, but fix the problem, right? Like now we have this issue with all the mass graves. It's like, excuse me, uh, you're just gonna throw money at us to be like, oh, go find the bodies, yeah, and here's some money for counseling and no accountability. That's what's missing in this piece is that, I don't know where the money's going to come from to pay people out, but the problem still remains. So unless, every 2 years we're doing class action lawsuits, I mean, something has to change, but I kind of feel like it's quite obvious what needs to be done. It's the ill will that, you know, that seems to be the problem. And the thing is that, with Indigenous people, when we see what happened, with Joyce Echequan and the fact that there was a court case and the woman was never charged and then she still has her job and, we don't get justice a lot of the time. So when people like come to us and are like, let's sue, it's like, really? Really? Like, don't make me go through all that trauma and then not offer any aftercare because I mean, during, the residential school system, when they started, testifying, speaking to lawyers, a lot of people committed suicide afterwards. The pain that they had to relive is excruciating. Living on the streets, you're probably dealing with the police every day in some way. So that's a lot of trauma. And then what? What is the money going to do? Because you're still going to have the same problem. Anyway, I talk too much.
Not at all, not at all. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share?
No, I talk too much. You're gonna try to find a way to like make this very tiny.
No, no, no. It was all very important.